Well, hello, Sunday school. All right, I've got a story for you today. This is after what happened with Cain and Abel, if you remember that from last week. Now we are at the time where Noah lived. And time had gone by now. People were living. And remember back then when people would live like hundreds of years, right? So your grandparents could be like 500 years old, 600, 700 years old. So by this time, lots of kids had been born, and then they grew up and they had kids, and then they grew up and then they had kids, and then they grew, and so on and so forth. So the earth was just full of people. Lots of people were alive now. And what started to happen was, when you think back to what happened with Cain and Abel, and Cain was violent, and he didn't care about God. He didn't want to serve God. He turned his back on God and murdered his brother. That now became a thing that was very common. All the people all over the earth were sinning. They were violent against each other. They were hurting each other, even murdering each other. They were doing every single thing that God said, don't do, guys, don't do. And what happened was every person, all of humanity, turned their back on God. And they said, we don't care about God. We don't want to obey him. We don't care about this whole salvation thing that he has promised us. We're just going to do what we want. And there was so much violence. And God looked out and he saw one man and his family that did care about God, that did believe in him and didn't want to sin in all the ways that were around them. And that man was Noah and his family. And so one day, as God looked at all of these people on earth and how violent they were and how they were keeping having kids and keeping those kids away from God, and it was leading to no one on earth was going to be able to go to heaven. They had all turned away from God. So God's like, I gotta start over. I have to destroy all of this so that Noah and his family, the one family who believes in me, so that they can start fresh and they can populate the earth and have more kids, and they can grow up and they can all care about God and all want to serve him, and believe in the promise that a savior is going to come. And that's how I'm going to save humanity. So it was pretty scary because Noah and his family knew, okay, we are going to be saved. God sees that we have faith, but like their neighbors and their friends and the people they knew, they knew that they were going to die. Well, the time came for God to have Noah start getting ready for what was going to happen. So he came to Noah and he said, all right, Noah, you are going to build an ark. And this ark is going to be huge. And God gave him some specific directions on how to build it because it had to be like a really well made ark in order for Noah to survive what was coming. So here's what God said. He said, build an ark made of cypress wood. So that's a very special kind of wood. He said, make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. And so he was going to make all these rooms. And this big ark was going to be made of cypress wood, and then he was going to waterproof it with that pitch so that no water could get it. You know what's coming? I think you might. And then he said, make a roof for it and leave below the roof an opening 1 cubit high, and that was a measurement, all around. Put a door on the side of the ark and make a lower, a middle, and an upper deck. So we're talking massive ark, a massive, you can call it a boat, but it's an ark. It's huge. And it had all these rooms and these big decks. Okay, and Noah was probably like, what am I bringing along in here that I'm gonna need such a giant place to stay? And what's coming? Because I'm building a boat, and he was in the middle of a desert, and people were walking by while he was building this boat, and they were like making fun of him. And they were told, Noah would tell them, hey, God has told me that something's gonna happen, and that I need to build this ark because he's going to bring on destruction. And people would just make fun of him instead of believe him and turn their hearts and have faith in God. But Noah knew. He's like, I believe this. I'm going to do what God tells me to do. So he built that ark, and it was massive. Okay? And then the time came for God to carry forth his plan. So he said, Noah, there is going to be a massive worldwide flood. Something you have never, ever experienced before. Something that you could not even imagine. And he said, you are going to now start to see pairs of every single animal that moves along the ground, all the livestock, all the wild animals, and all the birds of the air as well. Every single type of creature that doesn't live in water is going to start coming to you in pairs. And you are going to use this giant ark to give them a home while this horrible flood happens. And so, sure enough, all these animals started coming just literally out of nowhere. Like, I've never seen that animal before, but it's coming on over, and it's got a male and a female, and it's coming on my boat. So Noah saw all these animals. He was getting them into the boat. And he had packed all sorts of food that he and his family were going to eat, but then also all the animals were going to eat. And so he knew, okay, we're in this for the long run. I don't know how long this is going to take, but we got lots of food. We are safe in this ark. God has told us it's going to be bad, but he's going to keep us safe. Once all of those animals had come into the ark, once Noah and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, those 3 sons who believed in God, came with Noah. And of course, Noah brought his wife who believed in God, and then Noah's 3 sons brought their wives who also believed in God. So here they were ready to go, and the flood started coming, and it rained like you've never seen rain before. Just drenching, just showering the earth. Not like a little, nice little sprinkle or like a quick downpour. No, it was like you could not see through all the water that was coming onto the earth. And it rained for 40 whole days and 40 whole nights. Now, if you think about that, it wasn't just like raining like a normal rainy day for 40 days and 40 nights. It was pouring like crazy amounts of water every single moment of 40 days and 40 nights. And what started to happen was it would flood, right? There was nowhere for the water to go. It would flood. So the water started rising and rising and rising and rising all the way up until they were in this ark, and they were floating on top of the water. And all of a sudden they were like, guys, we're going above mountains here. Like, we're literally in the water and we're going above mountains. So the water kept rising and rising and rising all above the mountains. And once it got way above the mountains, then the rain stopped. And if you've ever seen flooding before, even like puddles in your backyard, the rain stops, but you're left with this lot of water on the ground, right? So imagine having as much water that could go way over the tallest mountain you've ever seen. And not just a little bit over the mountain, way over the mountain. And they had to wait for all of that water to go down, to recede, okay, to dry up. Because they couldn't get out of the ark until there was dry ground to walk on and until they could plant gardens and have vegetables and food to eat. So they had to wait. Guess how long they had to wait? They had to wait 150 days. And as they were waiting, all that time, the water was slowly going down over 150 days. And they were taking this in like this just happened. Everyone has been destroyed who walked the earth. There is not a single person still alive. They all drowned in this flood because they turned their backs on God, and they were taking everyone with them into sin and to turn their backs on God. So we are the only ones left. And they realized that this was such a big deal. So they were praying to God. They were turning to him. They were believing his promises, and they were sticking together. Well, after that 150 days, Noah, let's see, so it was after just 40 days. So this was like in the midst of while they were waiting. So 40 days had passed since the water stopped coming down from the heavens. 40 days went by. And Noah opened this little window that he had made in the ark. And he had a raven, a bird. So he sent out the raven. And he knew that the raven would go and scrounge for food. So he'd fly around, find a spot he could land, and get some food if the water was dried up. Well, it had only been 40 days. And he sent the raven out, and the raven just kept flying back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And there was nowhere for the raven to go. So it just kept flying around. So Noah's like, okay, I got to wait a little longer. The raven doesn't have a place to land. There's no food available. What am I going to do? So he waited a little longer to hopefully then the surface of the ground would be dry. And so then he's like, okay, I'm going to send out a dove. And he knew that a dove would go and look for some type of like leaf or like plant to perch, like, to rest from flying so much, and then to find something to eat. So he sent out the dove. Well, the dove came back. Nothing. Dove couldn't find a place to perch. So it came back. And so Noah decided to wait 7 more days. He's a very patient man. Very patient indeed. So he waited 7 more days. And then he got the same dove and he's like, okay, let's try it again. Maybe 7 days now. The water has dried up. So he sent out the dove again. And guess what? That evening, the dove came back. And it had a beautiful, fresh olive branch in its beak. And it came back, it went through the window right to Noah, and whoa, did they celebrate. Like Noah and his sons and their wives, they all were like, there's vegetation, things are growing on the land. That means the earth has been dried up and we can actually go out of this boat that we've been in for 150 days plus 40 days and 40 nights of rain. So Noah took off the covering from the ark. Now, this was a big job. He and his sons had to take off this covering from the ark. And then they could finally look out onto the surface of the earth. Because remember, they just that little window that the bird could fly out of, that's all they had. So now they looked out on over the earth, and the ground was dry. Completely dry. No puddles, no mush. Everything was lovely outside. And so God said to Noah, Noah, come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Come out of the ark and bring all those living creatures that you kept safe in the ark and provided food. Bring them out. And now you guys can now start your family. Noah and his wife can have children. The sons and their wives can have children. And remember, they're going to have a long time to live still, so they can keep having children, building huge families. And all these animals now, male and female, they were going to be able to now start repopulating the earth. So Noah went out and brought all those animals, and they were celebrating. Oh man, they were probably singing, probably dancing. I bet, that'd been a fun party if you could join that party. And right away, guess what Noah did? Immediately, he went and he built an altar to the Lord. Now, if you remember what an altar is, it was just something that they would set up to have a place where they could worship and thank God. So they would like set up this thing. And if you've ever heard about like when they would burn sacrifices for God. And so what Noah did, I want to read exactly how he did it. He took some clean animals and clean birds. So these would have been like, not really, you don't think of like clean as in like not have mud on them, but just animals and birds that were very good. They were lovely animals that God said were clean. So he took some of those animals and some of those birds, and he built that altar and sacrificed those animals to God. Now, if that seems a little weird to you, like why would Noah do that? He did it because he wanted to show God that God was so important, and he was so grateful, and he trusted that God, even if he had to give up these birds and these animals, that God would still provide all of the birds and animals with having a lot of offspring and filling the earth again with birds and animals. So Noah went and he worshiped God and he said prayers, and that smell of the sacrifice, God calls it an aroma, made him very pleased and made him smile. And in his heart, God said, "Never again am I going to destroy all of humanity. Never again will I bring a curse like I did with this flood." And he said, even though humans are evil, even from the time we're born, we are sinful. Even though that's the case, God said, I'm never going to destroy the earth again. And then he said to Noah, Noah, here is how you'll know and you'll remember my promise. Every time I bring clouds and rain upon the earth, you once in a while will see that I've set a rainbow in the sky. And that is me remembering my promise to you that I'll never destroy the earth again, and you remembering that I have kept you safe. And now, even as people way after Noah lived, we remember that God is going to keep us safe, and he'll never again destroy humans in that way. And that is the story of Noah and the flood. Have a good day, Sunday School. Bye.